So thank you for joining us today. Today we will be presenting on employee engagement and how to build mentoring programs inside of your organizations. I thank everybody for coming. Our lovely legal team has reminded us that we do obviously always say that we are not giving legal advice, we are giving education here. So whatever we provide, if you're going to create something internally and you think that there may be any additional legal requirements for your state or for your organization or industry, we always, of course, encourage you to communicate with your appropriate legal team and counsel. This is our team. We have actually grown exponentially. We are now a team of 12 in the last year. So this is our team in the back, which is lovely. We are a human resource consulting company. We provide quality HR support for small businesses, and we're really between 2 employees, depending on what kind of industry, all the way up to anywhere about 70 employees. We specialize in blue collar support. We are very real people providing real support in HR. I think when you hear HR, even if you're an HR person, sometimes you cringe. We like to bring a little bit of reality and personality to human resources. We also pledge 1% of our profit, services, and our time back to our community. So we are a Pledge 1% company, and we're very, very proud of that. We also only communicate if you are ever interested in our services with what you need. We never oversell. We don't like to really bundle packages unless there's something that you're looking for. We do one-offs, so it's really customized to your fit. My name is Toni Runci, and I'll be your presenter today. I have a little over 13 years experience in HR. I graduated from SNHU with business as my undergrad and master's in HR. I have a background in many different industries listed here, and I hold a certification from both SHRM, which is the Society of Human Resource Management, as well as HRCI, which is the Human Resource Certification Institute. I also happen to be the co-founder and co-owner of BlueLion with my business partner, Allison. So let's jump into it here. Building mentor programs. Employee engagement is a focus that a lot of businesses I know struggle to work with and deal with, especially in our current society where we have more people working from home than ever before. And we're bringing people into our working environments remotely who have never necessarily felt or been in the environment or the culture that we like to tell people that we're proud of. So how do we really incorporate the old guard, the people who recognize the values of our business and recognize the brand and the importance of that, and pull new people in and have them engaged with us as a company? We think that a lot of that has to do with building strong mentor programs. Mentor programs can do so many different things depending on what you're looking for and what your end goal is. We're going to list out a couple of different ideas here. But at the end of the day, building a mentor program, one of the main goals, no matter what you pick, is always increasing that employee engagement. It helps you retain the top talent, which is very important in a market where people are able to move from one business to another very easily off of $1 increase, $2, $5 increase. So engaging your employee and letting them know that your culture is more than just an increase at the bottom value of their compensation is really important on keeping them with you and making sure that they continue to add value and you add value to them and that they grow within your organization. Mentoring, throughout our training, you'll see we like to add some little images and memes. Mentoring, obviously passing it on. If anybody has children who are of a similar age difference, the olders are always teaching the youngers how to get in trouble. Cautiously, we say, but building a mentor program is obviously about passing that knowledge down, passing the information of the institutional knowledge of your organization from the people who have been there long term to the newer people, and making sure that they understand the value of the organization and what the goal is at the end of the day, the mission, the vision, and where you're headed. Benefits of participating in a mentor program for the employer are more, if not just as equal to the ones to the employees. So as we said, it provides staff with an informal opportunity for education and learning. Not necessarily does it always have to be the HR person or the CEO or their manager. Engaging with them and telling them this is how we do things, this is our culture, this is our experience. People like to learn from their peers, even if they're peers in another department or if it's a manager in another department. Somebody else who can really incorporate day-to-day information and values with them is just as important to the employer as it is to the employee. Increasing your staff morale and job satisfaction reduces turnover. People are less likely to leave if they like where they're at. Yes, there's other things involved with that, such as compensation. However, a lot of times satisfaction can outweigh what an increase in move would be. It enables companies to transfer leadership and management skills to newer staff. If we take a look back on the last couple of years, we're 2 years into the pandemic with COVID, we can think about all the people who we've seen retire. We've seen great resignations. These are terms that we hear in the news, we see in articles, and trying to figure out now how we pass knowledge down to a whole new set of employees who are new to our industry, to the market, or even to employment altogether, graduating college, is difficult if we don't have those people there to help pass that knowledge down to. A lot of us may be playing catch up when we think about mentor programs if we've already lost the people who are able to help. Some of us might be in the middle, documenting those processes, for example, so that we can share that information with the next person coming in. And some of us may have already built really great mentor programs, and maybe this is just a refresher. But it's definitely one of the great ways is sharing information from somebody who has been in the organization or in the industry long term, and sharing that information as well with new people that are in the business or just in the industry as a whole. We've seen, as I said, in the last couple of years, people transitioning from one business to the next. Healthcare, for example, was very heavily hit. A lot of people retired or left that organization industry and moved to other places. We've seen blue collar companies, searching for people to come to their organizations. Right now, we have nobody to fill those roles. So getting a little bit more creative with apprenticeships, working with local schools has been something that we've been focusing on. Mentorships in your organization, once you get those people in the door, is so important to keep them engaged so that they stay and they don't move somewhere else. It saves time when problem solving, when taking on new staff, and it keeps them focused on project-oriented tasks. So not necessarily as a manager, especially in a small organization or a large one, is it easy for you if you have 10, 15, or even 2 employees, depending on how large your staff are, to help them out every second of every day, especially as they come in and they're learning new things. If you have them working with a mentor, a partner, whatever you want to call it, they're able to reach out to that person and ask the question first, bounce their idea off of them, get some more information, maybe ask clarifying questions, and then come to the conclusion or the answer of what they're looking for on their own. It reduces the stress for them about maybe reaching out to their direct manager or whoever may be in the next chain of command who will maybe think they don't know what they're doing. And it makes it a little bit more of a comfort and ease level for the person supporting them to say, okay, I recognize maybe where internally we have to fill some gaps to share some more information across the board. So it definitely helps create problem solving a little bit quicker. It makes a much more cohesive environment for everybody involved. The benefits to the employee, of course, is oftentimes people who are engaged in mentor programs develop faster, which means if you're looking for people in a succession planning, you can promote those people within a lot quicker. Not necessarily do they have to stay with the company as long, because they can really dive into those values faster by being connected to somebody who has had that tenure. They're more confident in their career advancement because they have that institutional knowledge. They know how your organization wants to do things, and they can represent your brand both internally and when representing you out in the world. They have higher job satisfaction, oftentimes too, because it has to do with who they're engaging with. We like to work with people who we like. So coming to work and being able to talk to people is great. We have a little bit less of that if we're an organization that doesn't have people coming to a job site or a work office. But being able to engage with internal communications, whether it's Google Chat or Teams or Slack or whatever Outlook processes, whatever it may be, it engages them a little bit more to work with each other when they know that there's an ease to reach out, get your answer, not necessarily be attacked or critically, viewed by not knowing the information right away. There's a potential for higher financial compensation for them, of course, and in a world right now, the higher the value of the employee, the better the money you're going to obviously produce for them, because they stay and they're providing value for your company. So by them learning more, by them being able to take on more tasks, by them being able to accelerate and be more efficient in your workplace, they create more value, they're worth more value. So it gives them and you a better opportunity to evaluate that success. And then, of course, a greater commitment to your career within the organization. More engaged people generally don't look for jobs elsewhere. People like to stay places generally. People don't like change, even though I'm sure everyone has heard a million times since probably elementary school, change is the only constant. It's still the only constant that we continue to generally dislike and buck against. So people don't generally want to move to an organization that's somewhere else, have to learn a whole new process and procedure, get to know a whole new group of people, if they can feel confident where they're at and the information that they have with the growth of commitment from their employer. So it's great for the employee, it's great for the employer, it's a win-win across the board. So when we build our mentor program, what do we need to pay attention to? Well, the first thing when you're doing anything is really to define your program goals. What are you looking to do? Do you have a lot of senior level leadership or people in executive level leadership that are looking to transition outside of the employment? Are they retiring? Are they stepping down? Are they moving from full-time to part-time? We've been seeing a lot of that in the workforce as well. People who are full-time who aren't necessarily fully ready to retire, slowly stepping down or stepping back. So what's your goal? Is your goal to fill open positions? Is your goal to create higher employee engagement, increase cross functionality? Whatever it may be, you want to define that first because it will define who gets to participate and how you're going to evaluate the metrics of the success of those particular goals. You're going to outline that mentoring process in the workplace. So that has to do with communication and what works best. Are you an in-person workforce? And there are companies still through COVID who have had to do that. Construction companies can't do their jobs from home. HVAC guys can't do their jobs from home. So they're still working in trucks with other coworkers. They're changing up teams, whatever it may be. So communicating, what is that going to look like in the workplace? Is it going to be weekly meetings? Is it going to be different kind of assessments that you're evaluating through a certain timeline or process? You want to obviously have everybody from the top down bought into it so that everyone is creating a positive buzz. A mentor program is a form of change. So sometimes people also are dreading that. Sometimes the mentor dreads it, sometimes the mentee dreads it. But if you're communicating and you really kind of communicate the background, what your focuses are, the positivity of it, and give a little leeway for people to figure out their way through this process with those partners, then you're going to have a higher probability of it being successful and more people buying into it. Select the program participants. So this is sometimes things, for example, that I suggest where I say, are you going to do a small group of people first? Are we going to test or beta or pilot this? Are we going to see, okay, you know, we have that maybe one person in the workforce who has so much knowledge, but they're afraid, for example, to maybe train somebody else because they think it's a way that you're pushing them out. So if we have those kinds of people, those are the people we want to talk with first. We want to get the naysayers on board before anybody else, because when other people who are generally easier to maybe go with the flow see that, you know, that Susan or that Bill, who are really difficult necessarily to get information from, are interested in this process, then we are more likely to recognize the value of it and see, wow, if they're finding, you know, value and success in this, so will we. Or do you want to roll it out to the entire company? You have different teams working collectively. You decided to pair certain people up or have certain groups. Mentor mentees does not always have to be a 1-to-1 ratio. It could be a 1-to-2 or a 2-to-2. It could be a small group if you have different kind of collective things. But you want to obviously communicate again what your goals are and how you're going to be measuring those goals. So then matching the mentors and mentees is just as important as anything else. This is going to be heavy to your success. You want to find people that obviously will get along, but you also want to find people who might be a little challenging to one another and ask the hard questions of why do we do something like that? Or have we ever thought about something different? Because if we're trying to maybe expand our company or expand our internal knowledge, it's important not just to have the information flow down, but have information flow up. You know, people that are coming into the workforce now, people that are transitioning into different industries, they have a lot of background and knowledge that come with them, and they might be able to bring new ideas on how our businesses can be more efficient. And if we don't have people that are asking those questions, they're just sitting back and listening and kind of taking the notes and not really understanding the whole process or being interested in how to improve, then what's the point? So it also kind of ties into that, is finding the right pairs of people. And communicating, if we do have a couple of difficult people, making sure that they're with strong leaders, or making sure that those strong leaders, if they're difficult, are with strong employees. that are maybe a little bit more thick-skinned or can kind of take it, or have no problem being more open and honest with them and saying, listen, I'm happy to be your mentee, I'm happy to be your mentor, but we have to set some ground rules internally for our communication style and what we really sort of see success with each other. And then provide the mentorship training. So if you do have a mentor program, sometimes mentors don't know what they're doing. What should I share? How should I share it? How much is sharing? Should I overshare? Is being a mentor checking up on my mentee all the time? Is it micromanagement? So letting them know what the look is of the organization. Is it, okay, we basically are looking for you to sit with them, you know, for a couple hours a week and explain what you do for a job, explain the business, have them be on calls if you're promoting somebody, for example, from sales, have them watch you if you're introducing somebody new to tech, whether it's technology on the computer, or if you have somebody that you're trying to promote within your organization that does install or anything like that, actually hardware related. Do you have people who are interested in one aspect of your organization that are trying to grow into another aspect? Oftentimes we don't realize that we have employees who are working or going to school full-time as well for a different thing that's in our organization that maybe they don't know is available to them. So being connected to our employees is just as important, and recognizing their wants and needs and hopes, and seeing if that's something you can meet internally or provide them internally, so that if they do go somewhere else, maybe they can then promote somebody else to come in-house with you. Anybody who is a Star Wars fan, of course, this is Yoda, and we all, no matter who we are, mentor or mentee, have many things to learn. I'm sure you're hearing it in his old, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a Star Trek fan, so I don't know what he is, but whatever his voice is, you, I'm sure, hear it. So setting goals. This is the first step, as we discussed. What do we need to do? So setting a mentor program goal is fundamental to the success, because otherwise, what is the point? If you're not matching people correctly, or whatever your organization is trying to do with this mentor program, if you don't have a goal, how do you know you've achieved it? How do you know you don't need to course correct or add additional kind of processes, steps, or whatever it may be to the organization process of this mentor-mentee program? So set those objectives. Is the objective to help fill positions that are going to be open in the next 3 to 5 years? Solid succession planning usually takes that amount of time. If you have somebody who's been in an organization for 10, 20, 30 years, who's looking to retire soon, you're not going to be able to fill a role, post a role, fill a role, get somebody in, get the right person in, get that person trained, and have all the knowledge within the next 3 to 5 years, if that's what that person's timeline is. If you don't start now and you make sure that mentor program or that connection between those people exist. Maybe it's to improve cross functionality. Maybe you are struggling with employees not understanding how their piece fits into the company as a whole. So maybe your mentor mentee program is communicating what different departments or different aspects of the business do. Your communication is trying to create a little bit more collaboration and cohesion as an entire organization. So making sure that the goal may be people understand the different organizational backgrounds and information of different departments. That could be a goal. Maybe your goal is you have new employees who you're looking to promote pretty quickly because you see rapid growth within your organization. Well, in order to sustain that rapid growth, you need to have a solid foundation of people to rely on to service those customers. So making sure they get up to speed quickly. So you want to put them with those senior level people who are on the field or on the job so that they can learn a little bit more rapidly than maybe trying to read something or follow processes in a manual or in a notebook, whatever that may look like. So setting those objectives is really important, making sure that they're clear, that they're measurable and attainable. I'm sure if you're an HR person or really anybody who's been to school probably within the last decade, you have easily heard of the SMART method, which is, studying the goals the smart way. So measurable, attainable, realistic, of course. So some of those things are important when we're setting those goals. The objectives can help you understand the value of your program and obviously give your mentors and your mentees clear goals of where they're headed and what they need to be on target for when they're meeting with each other. The goal should reflect the company's general goals. So look at your annual, your 5-year lookout, your 10-year lookout, and see what you might need to have backed into that process. Who's knocking on the door? Outline the mentoring process is the next phase in setting up a solid mentor-mentee program. How will mentees apply? Are you going to have certain people participate and other people not participate? What exactly is going to be the process? Whether the mentee or mentor relationship will be done one-on-one, as I said, or project-based or in a group setting. It does not necessarily need to be a one-to-one ratio. I reflected that earlier. It could be maybe a 2-to-1, or it could be a group setting. If you have a project that you want people to get a little bit more knowledge and development on, you can build it that way as well. How long will the mentorship last? Sometimes it's indefinite. I don't generally encourage that. Sometimes that can get a little bit, not necessarily stale, but eventually there runs out of information to share. There runs out of enough value within a one-to-one partnership to share. Hopefully they create that relationship where they work together really well. And they can communicate back and forth and collaborate still in the future. However, moving them maybe to another mentor, if you're going to maintain that mentor-mentee program, is important, or allowing them to communicate with other people as well. How will you track the success of your program? What are your metrics going to be? So if it is going to be, for example, that succession, you're going to hire somebody, you're going to train them to take over someone's role. You should probably have steps of saying, okay, let's look at this job description of what you do every single day, what you do every single month, every quarter, every year, because there's things that might be annual that someone needs to understand the background of. Then list those out. Does this person, these are the things we want this person to be able to do. Maybe at a set timeline, we want to see that they can do this on their own. So if it's being able to build sales calls or sales, leads pipeline, okay, well, after a few, 3, maybe 4 months of watching you do it, now we want to see them put it into practice. Can they actually do what we've trained them to do? Selecting the program participants is important. Again, are you going to let everybody participate, or are you going to only let a few people participate? Gather those useful details about those participants. You know your employees better than anybody else. You want their backgrounds, their key skills, what their strengths and weaknesses are. As I shared, sometimes it's good to put people's strengths and weaknesses together, because a mentor and a mentee can learn from each other. It's not necessarily information coming from one direction down to the next. Ask your mentors what they most like to share with their mentees, and interview your mentees about their career goals. What do they want to do in the organization? Are they currently going to school? Do they see themselves moving up? Are they interested in this industry? What's their end result? Some people obviously don't look that far out maybe, but they have a good general idea of where they want to land. Are we on target for them? Are they inside the lines of where we're coloring for our mentor program? When you ask a mentor what they think the most valuable thing that they're sharing with their mentees is, that's helpful for you to recognize where your company culture is at, the benefits of the company, what's going on there, and where your employees feel like they're driving the organization. Are your mentors on target for where you see your business going? If not, we need to have that conversation. Choose mentors who are successful and well-respected within the company. I think sometimes we probably all think of that one person, maybe girl or guy, who is always going to be that difficult person that no one really ever wants to work with. We work around them or through them or in spite of them. And maybe they're not the best mentor for the organization, or maybe they are, but you need to put the right mentee with them or give them that correct mentor training, which we're going to discuss. So making sure that you're picking the right participants for the program, even if it's a beta test, is just as important as setting the objectives and goals of what this is headed towards. Next is matching those mentors and mentees. It's really just, expanding on the previous slide, where you're finding the right partners to go together, making sure people's skills and abilities work for one another, their alignment and what their goals are. They can communicate well with one another, and it also makes sense on where they are. So if you're the kind of organization that spans across, America, you want to make sure your mentor and mentees are also maybe on the same time schedule and timetable. It'd be a little bit harder for a New Hampshire employee maybe to be a mentor with a California employee. If you've already started, you're 3 hours ahead of your day, you're ending your day and they're still 3 hours behind. Making sure that you can communicate that. If you have a part-timer and a full-timer, making sure that those schedules kind of line up. Are they going to be in-person meetings? Are they going to be virtual meetings? What does that look like? Having the right talent available to serve as the mentors is important. If you don't necessarily have the right talent available to serve as a mentor, then we're going to do a lot of that mentorship training before we necessarily pull the mentees into the program. Clearly, I had to think for Katz when I built this training. My team member built this training actually and supported me, so very thankful for her. So next is to provide mentorship training. So it is beneficial to train your mentors so that they understand the expectations and the best support for those mentees. This isn't one of those things where, okay, you know, you're assigning two people together and you have one person who is that more, you know, leadership style, long tenured employee, and all they think they're doing is just, yeah, when the kid comes and asks questions, I'm going to give answers. You need to be engaged. You need to make sure they're engaged. They have to be following up just as much as the next person. I worked in an organization once. We had come into support and they had assigned one of the owners of the organization with one of the employees who was hopeful to really work themselves up into the business. Well, they thought they had done a good job communicating. When we came in, they hadn't met in months. Nobody knew. They thought, well, you know, the owner thought, well, I thought he was going to reach out to me. He needs to show the initiative. And the employee's like, I don't know what his schedule is. He's in and out of the office. He's very busy. I don't want to interrupt him. By not setting those clear expectations, neither one of them were getting success out of that program. And both of them were feeling a little bit blown off and had a little bit of a sour taste from one another because they had expectations they hadn't communicated that were not getting met, that nobody knew. So communicating and having that mentorship training is very, very important. Set aside time to partner with the mentor to define their role. Let them know, hey, this is what we're looking for out of this particular employee. This is this employee's background. They're in school for this particular thing, or they went to school, or they had a couple different businesses or organizations they've worked at previously that gave them these talents, and we want to expand on those. Or we think that they're going to be a good fit long-term for XYZ. Because if the mentor knows what we're heading towards, they can try and pull that talent, pull those values, and connect those dots internally with the organization. So we can establish some of the following. What is the mentoring program in the workplace? What benefits will the mentor and mentees enjoy? How often will it take place? And what format will it take place? So is it going to be virtual meetings? Is it going to be calls? Is it shadowing the job? Whatever that looks like, making sure it makes sense for those end results and with the people that you've assigned and are attracting to be inside the organization. The power of mentoring, as I said, is to increase that retention. You know, by doing this right, you're increasing your employees' engagement, you're increasing your other talents' engagement, you're investing in your staff, you're investing in the people who are investing in you. If people are happy, companies are more efficient. If you can work more efficiently, you don't need to hire necessarily another employee. You can create an improvement on that bottom line just by engaging better. Your customers will generally be happier because your internal customer, your employees are happier, taking care of those other customers externally. It enables you to have that development. I'm sure many of us have thought about back to a job where maybe we worked for 3, 4, 5 years. Some of us maybe haven't worked that long, for example, at one organization, but we think to ourselves, we started and then all of a sudden time goes by and we're in the same spot. How did we end up here? Well, nobody engaged with us to talk about what that next step looks like. And sometimes maybe that next step is not necessarily internal. We've worked with businesses to set up development plans where they bring certain staff in that they recognize as a high turnover role. So what they do is they engage with them to say, okay, I know you're probably only going to be here 2 years because it's, for example, an install role. It's taxing on your body. It's taxing on you and your family if you have to travel every 3 out of 4 weeks of the month. Where do you want to be? So it engages them a little bit further and also helps them know, oh, okay, maybe I can see, you know, a more advanced career, not necessarily going out onto the job and doing different install. Build a strong leadership candidate pool. If we're working with our leaders on a regular basis, our senior leadership, our top talent, our A players, because it doesn't necessarily need to be a leader, of course, although I do hope if you do have A players, you are putting them in some kind of leadership role. But making sure that we have a good candidate pool and that those mentees hopefully one day will be the pool for future mentors. You know, if we've ever looked back and you can think about somebody who's been a true mentor to you, it's maybe encourage you to say, I would love to take someone under my wing and teach them the way because it was so impactful for me. It got me where I am. It increased my organizational background, it increased my education, increased my interest. And I've worked myself so quickly through my career because I had that person helping me along the way. Not necessarily do you need to be stepping in the same holes that the person before you did, to have the knowledge of what that whole experience, for example, looks like. So making sure that those candidate pools are really strong, making sure we're hiring in the right people to work in our organizations. I know that's hard to say because right now most of us will probably just take any warm body because we're so afraid of the lack of talent, the lack of people as a whole working right now. But I think we do still need to be as cautious as we can be moving forward to bring the right people into our organization as we continue to grow. So let's break it down, right? Let's take a look back at what our 5 basically processes. And I'm going to make it seem easy, but it's obviously not. And it does take time if you're going to do it right. On average, building out a mentorship program, when you truthfully think about the whole process, building it, not even actually implementing it and seeing if it works, on average, depending on your company size, can take about 3 to 6 months because it takes meetings between the correct people in the organization who need to buy in, to finding out what it looks like, to finding out what the goals are, to finding out who's going to participate, talking to those particular people, and then rolling it out. And if anyone's schedule looks like my schedule, you probably think, where am I going to find the time? So fitting in even 1 hour a week, you know, in a 6-month time frame is not that necessarily unrealistic. So creating that vision, what does it look like? You know, what are our goals? Identifying those challenges. What is standing in your way of doing a mentor program? Do you not have necessarily the right people in the leadership position to be able to be mentors? Do you not have enough time, resources, or whatever the background may be to connect these particular people with one another? Communicating, setting the tone and the rules of engagement so people know what the expectations are of them, both the mentor and the mentee. Maybe you want them to follow up with you on a particular timeline every month when you're meeting with them, or every month you ask for a check-in of where things are at, of what you've defined for your measurables. So you can see that those are getting hit, or you can see that you need to course correct. Reviewing those targets, of course. Are you hitting those goals? Okay, great. So-and-so is capable of doing those sales meetings. Excellent. The next step is what? And making sure you're always looking at the next step of how to continue to improve that person and improve the process along the way for this mentor-mentee relationship. And then stick with it. There are going to be issues and hurdles along the way. People are difficult. Things will pop up that will be frustrating. You know, someone might accidentally say something a little curt or a little, you know, more direct, and somebody might maybe take that personally when it wasn't necessarily personal. Maybe they misunderstand different expectations. Communication, I always say, is our biggest barrier to communicate. So making sure that we are having that conversation, we're understanding each other and what we're expecting from one another, and that language that we're using makes sense across the board. And when it does get difficult, don't just throw in the towel and say, listen, this was a bust from the beginning. Look at what's not working. Look at what is working. There's always going to be some of both, whether it's balanced, maybe not. But then try and replicate what is working and seeing if you can adjust as you go, because sticking with it is where you're really going to see your culture shift and change into what you're looking for. And that is a couple of different backgrounds and steps on how to build a strong mentor program. Now is when, of course, I will be able to take any questions that you can put in the Q&A or in the chat function. Again, if you want a recording of this presentation with this PowerPoint, please feel free to put your email in or just say your name. I, of course, have your emails from when you registered. So if you would like it, just please put your email into the chat or the Q&A. I will leave the Q&A open just for a quick minute to make sure if you have something that you're typing, I can answer it. Can you recap how to measure success of a mentorship program? So that's a great question. So how do you measure the success? The first thing you have to think about is, what was your initial goal? If your initial goal is, for example, we had, okay, I'll go back to this one that we particularly built. We had the installers for a particular organization, a sign company, that we knew would have high turnover, but we needed to keep them for at least 2 years. We built in a mentor program where they were in-house with another office staff. Our goal was that they understood, what does the business do? How does what they do work with our organization? And when they're on site, how can we improve the brand and the communication to the client of what we're doing back home? What we ended up doing is connecting them with different members of different teams. So we had graphic designers, we had project managers, we had sales representatives, We had owners, we had operations managers, all of them tying directly. They also had a warehouse that was in charge of actually creating and manufacturing the signs. So we had them working with these particular people when they were in-house during their 1 week a month and learning the different process and skills of what those jobs were, because maybe they wanted to come in-house. So what we would then do is we'd say, okay, you were with a particular fabricator. We asked the fabricator, if you weren't here, could this person fill your role? Can we see the skills that they're developing when they're working the lathe, when they're working these different print presses? And we would be able to see in person that these people who this job wasn't what they were doing, learned these skills in a timeline that said, okay, they're able to develop and learn and come in-house and pick up the job quicker. We'd ask them, even if they weren't necessarily looking to be graphic designers, we would ask them to communicate with us, how do you see your position filling in? And they would tell us very clearly over time, well, when I'm working with a graphic designer, I recognize now how much work that they're putting in when they're telling me where these signs go. And I show up on site to install over 1,000 signs for a multifamily property in a high rise in New York. Wow, somebody sat down and they made this look beautiful. I need to take care of this product. I'm just not smashing this in. Oh, I've made product waste. It is what it is. It created a much better communication and respect for one another. So our way of measuring it was watching to see how our turnover looked, and our turnover did drastically drop. We still lose those people, which we know because the job is difficult and it's hard to keep people long-term in that kind of forced environment. It's like truckers, you really have to love being on the road in order to keep that kind of a job. So building those metrics has to do with what you're looking for. And we are looking to keep them involved. And some of those people we promoted in-house. So all of a sudden we had a project manager role. Well, these people had learned a lot of different things. We brought them on and they sat underneath a senior project manager and they learned and they took that position on. Or they came in and they started working in our warehouse. So we didn't lose them. We just lost them to that particular role. But when they came in, we then mentored them as a mentor with a new install technician so that they could recognize, oh, I can grow in this company. I can stay here and learn these skills. So that was one way that we measured the success, was the promotions. How many people were able to be coming in-house as we continue to grow, the collaboration, the employee satisfaction, and then of course the lack of turnover if we were able to keep people on average for that 1 to 2 years, when before the turnover ratio was closer to that 6-month timeline. So that's just one example. The other question is, forgive me if you said this in the beginning, but does BlueLion build mentor programs for clients? We do build mentorship programs for clients. We have to connect very closely and directly with the businesses. We also work with a lot of really great vendor partners. So if it's something that needs a lot more hands-on development, that's maybe not necessarily directly correlated with what we're doing or our reach or our scope, we bring in some of our partner vendors, and we work with some really great coaches that help our leadership team train those mentors and mentees and help build that out. But we do, depending on the organization, the size, and what your goals are, we absolutely can help. And we're not afraid, if it's something that we can't help with, pulling in the right people who can. What specific numbers were you able to tie to this? NPS scores or something additional? Mentorship is indirectly impactful to employee retention metrics, but can't be seen as a single impact on retention or promotion rate, in my opinion. Great question. So here's the thing. When you're working a mentor program, you have to be careful about what other initiatives you've got going on, because it's like any kind of scientific experiment when you think about it. If there's too many variables inside the pot, you're not really sure which variable is having the impact. When we started with the organization, this particular team was having a 6-month turnover time. And most of it, when we asked them during their exit interviews why they were leaving, they told us, one, the job is hard, being away from their family. We can't change that. It's the bona fide job requirement. You have to be away 3 out of the 4 weeks of the month. There's nothing that we can transition out of that particular process. But the second was, they didn't really feel tied into the organization. When they were out often, on the road with 2 different guys, they're in a hotel and then they're coming back. They're here for a week and then they're back out. They don't know what's happening in house. They have no idea really what's going on. We do most of the work. We ship everything down. So when we built it in, we instantly started having what we called 30 by 30s. That's how we had our check-ins with those particular people. So every 30 days, the manager, who was not part of the mentor program, would check in with both the mentors and the mentees and say, how are things going? How do you feel? We hoped that they were honest, and most of them were very honest when they came in. Some people said, I struggled. Some people said, I'm not struggling. Some people said, my mentor doesn't follow up as often. Some people had other feedback. So basically what they shared with us over time, and it took about 2 years for us to really see kind of the growth on that. But they were able to increase that tenure where now, right now, their retention rate for that particular department is about 14 months before somebody leaves on average. And it's about a team of 10 when fully staffed. So we were able to do it through exit interviews, our monthly 30 by 30s, and then of course checking in regularly and making sure how was our promotions working internally. We reach internal for promotions first. So we always asked people, are you interested in coming in-house and working in the warehouse? Some people were like, yes. Some people who mentored said no, they weren't interested in doing that. But they recognized that the value that they hadn't saw, because they're like, I see everything ties more closely together. So that's how we were able to tie those particular, those things into those evaluations. I hope I answered that question. I'm not sure if I did. I do see an email asking for the recording, which is great. I can absolutely get that to you. Do we have any other questions? Awesome. Well, if you do have other questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. My email, you can email us at info@bluelionllc.com. We have one person who answers that email, and if there's stuff that comes into me, she'll shoot it over to me. We have a really great team here at BlueLion, so we're all very connected and intertwined. So we're thankful that you joined us today on our presentation. We hope you found value in this. If you did, please subscribe to our newsletter. We do trainings every month for free on these different kinds of topics to help your organization be more successful. And we hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.